Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're chatting with Lindsay Sheldrake. Lindsay is a seasoned people and project leader with over a decade of experience spanning engineering, design, creative construction, and custom manufacturing. She thrives on exploring the what if and why not, challenging the status quo and navigating beyond conventional norms. So first of all, welcome to the show, Lindsay. And why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing?
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll start off by saying thanks, Matt, for inviting me. And wow, that was quite the intro. I'm not sure I have much more to add to that.
Well, I have like 200 questions that come out of that. So you got to tell us a little bit of background on where that all stems from.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess one thing I will say is I am a bit of I had a previous employee actually tell me once, like, I was worried that I'm not a good process follower or a rule follower. And that's why I kind of say out of the box or not so corporate project manager is another thing I say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of felt bad because I'm pushing everyone to follow the processes, follow along with the systems and the structures we create, and be accountable and responsible to do that, sustainably. And I sometimes question whether I do. And
You do the opposite of it sometimes.
well, sometimes, and I will say it's not intended to be a do as I say, not as I do. It's not that way at all. And actually, this project coordinator validated it back to me, which made me feel good that I wasn't being really irresponsible. But she said, no, I actually think you know and follow the process the most out of any manager or leader I've experienced. And I said, wow, okay, like, thanks, but like, please explain that to me because I don't even believe it myself. And she said, you understand it so well that you know where to find kind of the weak spots in the electric fence. You know when you can kind of bend and flex and push and pull and pressure in order to serve each situation individually.
Okay.
So that's why I kind of say it. I'm pretty adaptive and pretty flexible, which is not, I mean, I don't want to say like from project managers out there, the typical stereotype would be quite rigid and follow the rules and everything like that. So I know the rules verbatim, but I definitely know what you can kind of curate and what you need and what you can use depending on the situation.
Okay. And what got you into the work that you're doing?
Well, it's definitely been more of a journey. I mean, I guess that's kind of a bit of a cliche. Everyone kind of says that now, but it's been a bit of trying to figure out where I fit and where I don't fit. And so, yeah, started out oil and gas. That was, a while ago, Calgary. What do you do when you want a job? You go and you get some sort of form of education in oil and gas, and you come out and you get a job, and it's a blast, and it was.
Yeah.
And
Until
then
the layoffs come, and then it's not as fun for everybody.
Well, I have to say I was quite actually, it's funny you say that. I did get laid off from my first job. We got taken over within 3 months. So that was a bit of a different layoff. It was through acquisition. So, but because it was so, quick turning and vibrant, I was able to hop out of there and find another job, like finish that, moved on to another one. So early on, I will say it's interesting. The first or the second company it would have been that I started at was focused on optimization. So that's where I started to get into that whole mindset of, is this necessary? Should we be doing this? Should we be doing this now? That kind of like thinking right from the get-go early on in my career. So oil and gas, then I took some time off to raise kids, 3 kids in 3 years. Well, you can imagine how that was.
Yeah.
So it's a bit nutty. Definitely had to flex my efficiency muscle during those years as well. And then from there, I ended up more in the creative industry. So when I worked in oil and gas, I was in engineering design, so oil and gas and construction. So was still able to be creative, but definitely wanted to get more pushed on the creative side. So that's where I found myself in interior design. And I worked in that industry for a few years and then really felt like I was good at the project management side, good at the budgeting, the managing numbers, managing all the many moving parts. Worked well with clients, but also really understood the pain of like the contractor or the construction crew who had a designer that maybe designed something that was unbuildable. I really wanted to make sure that I was designing things that they could build. So that's kind of where the next role was, more in industrial design, which kind of I felt like was a good mashup or collision of engineering design and interior design. It kind of brought the two together. And that's where I was my last actually employer. And I will say was probably my biggest influential career move, as far as that's when I started becoming a leader, a manager, really making a difference in, mentoring and helping and improving others through processes and systems, technology, and also from helping them work together and collaborate to really get to a point where I created a self-directed team and then just self-directed myself out of there.
That's the cliche of you're trying to get yourself out of a job, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but it just organically happened.
Yeah. For
So,
those people that don't know, can you just talk maybe a little bit about what industrial design would be? And actually, I'm going to add one thing onto that as well. As you talked about designers putting out projects that were unbuildable. So maybe I'll ask you the two questions maybe at once, because they can kind of go together. First, what's an unbuildable project, and why do people have a disconnect between that? And then what is industrial design?
I mean, I guess an unbuildable project is something that hasn't been done before. I'd like to think that, and that's where industrial design does come in.
Yeah.
There is a belief in industrial design that anything is buildable. It's just actually like the proper materials that you're selecting in considerations of the conditions, how you're building it, how you're installing it. That's really like, so I guess for me in interior design, I didn't have the awareness of the missing pieces, which not deliberately, but by coming into industrial design, I definitely got there. The two individuals or owners I worked for, they created the company out of a belief that we can do anything, like we can build anything. And that's really what it was. I mean, when you have a company run by two artists, like try to tell them not to, and it pretty much is like fuel for the fire. So, as a CAD designer starting out, and even as moved into managing and leading, I had to figure it out. And that's where kind of like my resiliency around any problem solvable, because really someone knows the answer, right?
For sure.
That's kind of where it started. And, whether it was a product or whether it became a way we did stuff, or, a tool we used, or how we all, work together in the container, it really was about contributing to that unbuildable thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's very cool. I've worked with a few industrial designers, well, quite a few industrial designers in the past, or architects or whatnot. And it's funny because you can always fairly quickly understand who's been in the field and who hasn't, because when you have people that have some of that experience of actually being in the field and understanding the on-site projects going on, there's a practicality, I'll say, that comes with it that doesn't always come with somebody that doesn't have the experience. And sometimes they get to the point where they're delivering you something where it's like, this is a lot of work, or this is out of the scope, or this is takes too much resources, or whatnot that is. So it certainly sounds like your background has given you some of that real life experience in terms of understanding what the projects actually need in the end there.
No, absolutely, for sure. And I will say, I did have the benefit of working in a company that had not just the design, but also the build side of it. So design from this is a concept, to let's put it into a CAD mind and make it 3D and start to consider materials. And then next phase, start to actually involve the shop and the welders and the team that's going to build it. So having a team that you're all part of the chain is pretty fantastic. And that's when I actually really started to love the management side and the people side, because what I realized was kind of happening is there's all these silos of conversations.
Yeah.
So the designers were designing things a certain way that the client liked, and it was really fabulous and new, and no one had done it. And I experienced that in interior design, like a designer that just thought in isolation.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then what would happen was when it got into starting to think about like finishes and actually like buildability, that's where there was a collision. So what I started to do was back that process up and be like, well, let's actually all get together and talk about it like earlier.
Yeah.
Because
Kind of the
before we
round table approach.
totally, right? And then soon enough, they didn't need me in the room to facilitate the conversations. They would
Right.
walk by my office, and instead of the lineup at my door, they would go and collaborate and solve that problem themselves. And the other fantastic thing was that, they were skilling up as it was going on. So as the designer was learning from the CAD person, like why yes and no and why things can happen and can't happen, they were already, implementing that learning into the next design.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, continuous learning, it kind of goes on and on. I just
Yeah.
created the container for it,
Yeah.
which was, yeah, pretty amazing to see.
Well, and it gives everybody again that experience on, the welder now understands more from the design part and vice
Mhm.
versa. And the flow of information, I think, is an important thing in that field for sure.
Yeah.
So what does your day to day now look like? What do you do on a day to day basis?
Yeah, so I have still found myself in the creative industries.
Yeah.
I definitely maybe align or feel like I belong more with creatives. I
Yeah.
myself can be a bit of a bouncing ball. So I will say, even just navigating around the boardroom of maybe an engineering or an accounting group might feel a bit like unnatural for me. So I
Yeah.
definitely do well in more creative environments with, agencies, creative agencies, marketing, branding. One of my current clients is an architectural design firm. So a lot of the same strategies apply, whether, it was an industrial design, custom manufacturing company, or whether it's an
Mhm.
architectural design firm. You still have kind of the same pain points. You still have designers creating something that the next cog in the chain has to be able to translate into something.
Yeah.
So yes, I am working as a fractional COO or a fractional project director, depending on the ownership structure of the company, how many founders, or whether they already have a COO in place. And I just support them in really like bringing the people and the processes and their technologies or tools together to work
Okay.
well together. So sometimes they think the moving piece is that they don't have a technology tool. They're still using spreadsheets, or they're still just having too many conversations. But it really, at the end of the day, it's funny. Really, no matter what tools and technology you bring in place, if actually like the people aren't communicating and they're not committing to the big picture, like there's never mind bringing in the technology. But
Yeah.
interestingly enough, people are drawn to me and bring me in because of the technology side, because they see that advertisement online. This will solve all your problems. Get this PM tool. It acts as a person. But really, like, there needs to be a lot of things that happen before that. That's kind of like the container that everything sits in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that is what I'm doing.
Okay. And somebody that wanted to follow in your footsteps, like what are some of maybe the key skill or some of the key skills that have really benefited you towards your success?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I will say I am definitely more of a fixer and a builder. Someone told me about 3 months ago that you fit in three categories. You're either a builder, fixer, or sustainer.
Okay.
So definitely, if you want to be a fractional leader, you would, or yeah, definitely a fractional, you would want to be either a fixer or a builder, because once it gets to a point of sustainability, then you're no longer needed, which
Yeah.
is great. And
There's not
there's
the same
people,
value there, at least that you can provide back, right?
yeah, exactly. So I think that's super important. I think just like I did go ahead and get my PMP
Hmm.
designation, which I think is pretty valuable, because that is another just like an anchor into my understanding of the kind of the interworkings of projects. And it allowed me even to understand the principles, the theory, the things behind it, in order to bring that to the table. So that's been pretty powerful. I mean, to get your PMP, you actually need 3 to 5 years of actual experience, and it's a
Okay.
pretty rigorous process as well.
Yeah.
So having that experience is pretty important as well, and to do that and even to say it. And then from a leadership perspective, I'm pretty self-taught. Like, I have a gazillion books. I'm a bit of a knowledge addict, and I am constantly, reading books, listening to podcasts, talking to other leaders, see what they're going through. There's lots of resources out there. I did a leadership course not long ago through Rainforest Alberta, actually put on by Collectively Tangled in Calgary, great group.
Okay.
And it was about mental health and leadership, which is a big thing now. So just continuous learning, being willing to keep going back and self-improving to be a better leader. Because if you can't show up as a good leader, then you're not necessarily like setting a good example for the people that you are leading.
Yeah, you're not setting the right tone within that group.
Exactly.
Of
Yeah.
people, and sorry, just for those that don't know, PMP is project management professional. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's through PMI. Is it
It
PMI
is.
that puts that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And getting that designation, what is that designation about, I guess, and what has been the benefit to you in obtaining that?
Yeah. So what is it about? So it is PMI is an organization for project managers. There's all sorts of designations. So PMP is pretty, like, I would say it's the most common one. There's one about agile. There's one that's about change management. There's one that's like kind of a lesser down, less experienced version. There's so many different ones. And it's just actually like part of it is an ethical thing as well. Not taking on projects where you don't have any expertise or experience.
Sure.
And even from a side of how has it helped me? Well, when people see that, they know that I have the experience behind me, and also the knowledge and education or the certification to back me, that I know how to manage risk. I know how to manage stakeholders. I know how to manage budgets, time, like the typical stuff. But I will say nowadays, project management has become pretty like everyone's a project manager.
Generic almost.
It's become kind of generic, so it has become a bit of a differentiator.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely the difference between somebody that calls himself a project manager because that's what the job title that they were applying for is, versus somebody that's got that experience and the expertise in there. There's a big swing on that for sure.
Yeah, and that's actually like even how I've been able to help companies, because in creative firms, they don't necessarily have like their typical hires wouldn't be someone who would have that skill set of a project manager. And something I just actually heard from someone the last few weeks is that they did look to bring on like a more traditional project managers, but they weren't really a value fit to the company. So they were a bit stuck on how to navigate the situation. And to be honest, these aren't really tough projects to manage. However, there still is a budget, there still is a client with expectations, there still is a timeline, there still needs to be communication. So they need a baseline understanding on how to manage their projects. And I feel like as general a project manager has become, as far as the term, people also expect it on the other side of it. So there's two sides to it. People are using it, but also clients are expecting it. So when you go back and you say, well, your job is 50% over budget, the client's response is, well, how did that happen? And then they say, well, you wanted to make 5 different rounds of revisions. And they say, well, I didn't realize the 5 rounds of revisions was going to cause me to go over budget. You didn't tell me that.
There's a lack of communication there.
Exactly. Right. So, and as a person doing the work, you're so focused on, creating that logo or creating that website or creating that home design, that you get so caught up in the deliverable that you miss that part. And unfortunately, and you also get caught up in thinking, oh, this is the last round of revisions and then we'll
Right.
be okay. Like no more
Right.
budget creep, no more scope creep. So, kind of passing the problem down the road. So someone who is a project manager has enough kind of experience and rigor to know like, okay, I got to over communicate. I got to be super transparent. I have to have a way to track that so that I'm aware.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's really where I come in, because I can come in and actually help them build their infrastructure to be able to sustain it going forward.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm wrong here then. So your kind of ideal client would be in that creative space where you
Yeah.
can really go help them on the project flow, the project management side,
Mm-hmm.
setting up systems, structures,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of rigidness, we'll call it, in a
Mm-hmm.
unrigid environment.
Exactly. Yeah. And because, like I said, I know how they are very agile workplaces. And in the project management world, that fits more in tech. But in
Hmm.
the creative industries, you're agile because you're actually managing quite a lot of projects in a short timeline, and things change very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So it ends up being a bit of like a hybrid. So yes, being able to come in and help them do that. And even it leans into mentorship, because they do have individuals in house that, because I didn't go to school to become a project manager. I think it's
Hmm.
only just now that universities are starting
Yeah.
to produce, they have curriculum through the business programs that are a project manager. I started as, a doer of things, and then it evolved into like managing all the moving parts of all the things. And then it
Hmm.
got bigger to manage the portfolio of all the projects
Yeah.
that were part of all the moving things, and the people and budgets and everything that were part of it. So there could be someone within a company that went to school, became a graphic designer. They like design, but once they start going, they realize they actually like all the other parts. So while they understand design and they have, they can have a sensitivity to it, um, they probably can dip into it a little bit, but maybe they have more for a passionate or more of a passionate or a passion for all the moving pieces.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that gives me also an opportunity to come in and teach and mentor. And I've been in that situation as well, is I have semi replaced myself more with like a junior or a project coordinator. I bring in the COO. I introduce them to the system we've created so they can sustain it. And I've taught the project coordinator, I've mentored the COO, we built the system, and then I'm not really needed anymore, right?
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
now,
Put the infrastructure in place.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, i- in your journeys, you talked about, a big podcast listener and enjoy
Mhm.
books and things like that. Has there been one influential book or podcast or a series of books or podcasts that have been more influential to you than others?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm a huge John Maxwell fan. I
Okay,
will
yeah.
say I learned so much about leadership and managing, and even the difference between leadership and
Hmm.
management from John Maxwell. He actually articulates it super well. So love his podcast. I really, to be honest, it's depending on the project I'm in, the pain point I'm going through.
Okay.
I use it as a resource.
Yeah.
Back in the
Yeah.
day, it was like, go to the library, research, go on Google research. I'll actually go to Spotify and start looking at podcasts
Yeah.
on whether it's dealing with tough conversations, whether it's dealing with budgets, whether it's dealing with, um, I don't know, just people in general.
Yeah.
So,
You'll
but I
find
would
something
say,
like very
yeah,
specific about what you're doing though.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I end up, and then I get a notification from my iPhone that I actually can't update it because I have so many podcasts that I follow that I download episodes. And like I said, it just depends on the problem I'm trying to solve.
Yeah. Yeah. You see, if you moved over to a real phone like a Samsung, you'd actually be able to add
Okay.
storage onto it. So I'll just let
Yeah.
you know that little tidbit.
I mean, what I have to, let's just call this a way to keep control of my knowledge world. So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
Apple has like a backdoor influence on that. But thanks, Matt.
There you go. There you go. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you or learn more about you, where would they go to find that out?
Yeah, so I am pretty active on LinkedIn. Someone asked me for like a resume the other day, and I was like, wow, that feels so old school. Like, here's my LinkedIn profile. I post pretty often. I comment pretty often. I'm pretty authentic to who I am. So I use it as a very dynamic resume, a very dynamic, like, just putting it out there, what's going on. So definitely reach out to me. I'm happy to have coffee, happy to connect with, anyone who's interested to learn more about what I do, or even just, to make a friend in Calgary, in the business community. It's a great community. I've met great people. So be happy to connect others and really just enjoy connections.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for joining us on the show today, Lindsay. Definitely appreciated your time, and the best of luck in 2024.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.